Hey, hey, infinite beings, welcome along to the Infinite Me, where every day we're chatting about incorporating more infiniteness into your life.
Yeah.
So I'm Nat. Over there is
Hello.
Mandy, my sister Mandy.
Yes. Hello.
So every day we just free flow, have a free flowing conversation. We pick from the Infinite Lucky Dip. So Mandy she's the treasurer of the Infinite Lucky Dip.
Yes.
Travels with her wherever she goes under lock and key. So they're just ideas things that have dropped into our sphere of awareness and said, let's have a conversation at some stage about that when it feels right. So we just pull something from the Infinite Lucky Dip, and that's what we talk about for the day. All right. So we've got a few people already in the house. That's very cool. Louise, Jasmine, and Shantina.
Shantina.
I was not. Yep, I'm never sure whether
Antenna.
I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm so sorry. Yes, so
Hi,
yesterday, hello. Yesterday we talked about, are you dead or alive? So pretty much. What was the actual title of the session?
Saying, are you choosing to live fully or avoiding death, as in death of the ego, like the ego is trying to stay alive and keeping us in the stories?
Yeah. That was a cool session. That was really fun. Awesome. All right, so here we are on the 1st of September. We've done 2 months now of these sessions, which is really cool.
True.
Just got chalked up 2 months. All right, so today, what are we doing, Mandy? Come on.
All right, so we'll pull a little thing out of our little bag, as we said. So we'll see.
Our Sunday topic
My
is
hand.
I
grab one. It's like they're slippery. Slippery little
seconds. And it is.
Okay. It's not. No, I was just trying to think if we've already talked about it, but it's not about being positive all the time. So,
okay. Have we talked about that before?
No, maybe not. Maybe not as a whole topic. I'm just thinking, yeah. So maybe we've talked about it off camera. I think it was probably that I'm thinking of. So
it all just blends into one.
Yes.
Fun. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's our topic for today. Can't just always be positive.
Yes.
All right.
A lot of people sticking to that positive thinking. That's where I think it came out of that conversation. I think we might have had offline. Yeah. People stuck in
positivity. Yes. So I guess over the many years, probably as long as we've been doing personal development stuff.
Yes.
There's definitely been a movement for positive thinking, and I feel like I was in that for quite some time. Our personal development journey started in network marketing.
True.
So it started probably more as making money, and then it moved into we have to get our heads right first. So we did the whole network marketing thing, and that was very much about positive thinking and creating what you want. And I guess some law of attraction stuff came into that as well. And it wasn't until we did Dr. John Demartini's work back in 2004 that we actually learnt about how the universe actually operates and the fact that everything is positive and negative together. And in fact, positive and negative don't even exist. So I was like, oh, there's a big wake-up call. Okay. That's totally different to the way we've been thinking and how a lot of people think. So we got a lot out of doing John's work. We were facilitators for him for many years.
Yeah.
Worked in his company, the company that promoted him in Australia.
Yes.
Many years as well. And I think going through that work really did help relieve a lot of stuff, because when I first got into John's work, I had just left my husband at the time, and I had just finished my career. I'd sort of left earlier and quicker than I ever expected to do that, to try and save my marriage. So that didn't really work. And 3 months later, I left him. So I was just like totally lost everything in a heartbeat. So finding John's work and going through that, his program, which was just run over a weekend at that point, the Breakthrough Weekend, learning about positive and negative and how bringing the two back together again actually gives rise to love and the truth, was a massive shift, massive shift that weekend. So that was certainly my first introduction, and probably yours too, Mandy.
I'd say so, yeah.
The whole concept of positive and negative always being balanced no matter what, and the fact that in actual fact there is no positive or negative. It's just perceptions.
Yeah. Well, I guess it only exists in our human reality, doesn't it? Like, because we're talking about a law of physics, that whole balancing, they cancel each other out, like as a wavelength, like it was coming from that study in physics about wavelength, movement of energy. So having the peak of a wavelength and the trough, and then so that's the positive. Get my hand. So the positive height of the wavelength and the trough of the wavelength. So the energy sort of moves, in that form, and then when it gets to the center point, the 0 point, if you like, is where it balances out. So it is like an actual law of physics that this was sort of coming from as well, about that the positive and the negative cancel each other out. And that's where you have the neutrality. So when we apply that to consciousness, it's the same concept. Like the ego likes to pull us into the positive and the negative all the time, whereas the infinite space is that 0 point is the neutrality space. So it's actually physically impossible to have positive all the time. Like, it's actually defying a law of nature, if you like, to be positive all the time. So oftentimes people that will try to be positive a lot will probably have a lot of internal shit going on. Like, so they might not show it on the outside, but there's usually a lot of stuff going on the inside that's unresolved, because it has to balance out. It has to come out somewhere in your expression. So it may come out as a physical, illness or a condition, say, as well. It could come out that way too if you don't see the balance in your life as well and address it or bring your attention to that. It will come out that way too. But as you said, ultimately, at the end of the day, like everything that we talk about, it is coming from that infinite space. So the positive and negative does only really exist in our human reality, but it is a law that we work with in this, in our reality here. So we do have to look at the both sides, and it's not about giving necessarily attention to the negative, like, whereas we make that our focus either. It's not about staying in the stories then and thinking, I have to balance this out. But if something's coming up in our experience, then we do need to address it. It makes itself known, if you like it keeps coming up in your face in many different ways. So there is something there to address, to sort of take the energy back out of that story that we've attached to, whether that's positive or negative. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So it can happen both ways.
And I think that's it. We've sort of got to a stage, well, hopefully it's turning around a bit now, but we certainly have gone through a phase, I feel, that the positive thinking movement has come into being, and of course the ego is going to attract to that because it's a very attractive package. You don't have to think about the negative stuff. You don't have to deal with anything. You don't have to look at the stories anymore. We can just all be positive. And it certainly was not based on science or reality, the truth. And so I feel probably a lot of people actually have gone through that stage of almost being a little bit more upset and totally out of balance because of always trying to project this positive image, and then it gets reinforced over and over again because we've got the memes showing us that, and our friends are talking about this, and there's movements on social media about this and all this stuff. And so when it can't happen, and it doesn't happen to for anyone, everybody is going to be sitting there beating themselves up. Probably
not being positive all the time.
Because you can't be positive all the time. It's like, I'm doing this wrong, so now I need to meditate more, or I need to do this course, or I need to do something else, or I need to do another practice to get positive because that's what I'm supposed to be. Everybody else seems to be able to achieve it, but no one's actually talking about the fact that no one's achieving it. Like, no one's been able to get to that stage. But we're all just bubbling along as if everything's great on the outside world, and we're all killing ourselves on the inside. So I do hope that a lot of that movement now is breaking down and decaying, because I don't think it's self-sustaining either. No. So eventually that whole positive movement has to break down under its own weight. But and to sort of have to face the negative stuff definitely is really scary to the ego. It doesn't want to be doing that. It wants to always be the positive side, and or it sometimes always wants to be the negative side either as well. Like it can go to the other side where you just find somebody that's just miserable all the time, and always seeing the glass half empty, and that's very much the ego as well. Like it definitely can go to that stage. And so maybe the natural tendency for the ego is to be in that negative space. Like I know mine tends to go there. Like I think we were talking about this, is like, how come we're also excited about watching the news of things going wrong?
Yeah.
Why do we have such a fascination about that stuff? You know, people being murdered, or something going wrong with the country, or this happening or that happening. Like people are generally obsessed with that sort of negative stuff. And I don't think it's because we're obsessed with that negative stuff. It's just what the ego, the basis of the ego tends towards the negative side a lot of the time. And so we try and balance it out by having that positive side and really talking ourselves up. And I can convince myself, and that's virtually what you're trying to do, convince yourself that you can be positive, and move away from this stuff. I don't want to watch the news anymore. And so we then are completely trying to shut all that stuff out as if it doesn't exist.
Yes.
And so we're just, no wonder we're all over the shop, going backwards and forwards between positive and negative all the time.
Yeah.
So when I did hear John's premise of love, unconditional love, is sitting in the balance, it's neutrality, it's the nothingness space. It was a big relief, definitely, to hear that and to finally let myself off the hook and go, wow, I don't have to be all those things. I can actually just be neutral and sit in the middle. And that's and that's scary to the ego too, because it looks like it's boring. Like now I don't have a positive or a negative feeling about anything. Like I just sit there. I don't know what to do now, because there's nothing that I'm attracting to, as in the positive, and there's nothing I'm repelling, trying to move away from, in the negative. So now there's no movement at all. You're just sitting. And I was like, okay, well, that's not the answer either. So it's like,
yes. I think that whole positive negative thing is like our natural tendency is to always be looking for that equilibrium, like the balance point. So we go through we're going up, like we're either like building ourselves up, or we're like knocking ourselves down. Like the ego is constantly doing this up down movement, trying to get to, I guess our consciousness is pulling us towards the natural point, and the ego is comes down to the negative, but then it goes back up again. We're constant. Everyone knows that roller coaster of emotions, I'm sure. So it's so you had that instance where you beat yourself down for something. So like you just said, you judge yourself for maybe not being positive all the time. So you actually judge yourself for that. And so you're putting yourself down in the pit. So this is a terminology that John Demartini used to talk about a lot. It's like, whatever you put in the pit, which is the negative, you'll end up putting up on the pedestal, and vice versa. So anything that you put up, elevate up onto a pedestal, you end up putting into the pit as well. You end up resenting it, which is just it's a natural tendency. Like it's trying to balance out the two extremes all the time. So so you beat yourself up because you haven't been positive all the time. So you're putting yourself down in the pit. So then you'll find there's this natural tendency where you're like, start building yourself up again, going, oh, it's okay. I just did it this one time, like I'll get back on track and I'll pull myself back up again, and tomorrow's a new day, and like whatever you say to yourself, and you're trying to get yourself back to that neutral place again, but then you end up sort of, elevating yourself up again. And or you do this with other people, or you do it with other people a lot too. It's probably a lot of the time we do it outside of ourselves with people we're in relationship with. We build them up and think they've got more power than us, or we end up resenting them because of whatever they're doing, the story that we've got running about them. But there is that constant looking for that equilibrium. That's what consciousness is trying to bring us into, that space. But the ego is trying to take us out of that space all the time. So this is where that whole thing about putting the time and energy into being present and creating that inner space and bringing yourself into that neutral place is actually the thing that will stop the roller coaster ride, if you like. It's that's the thing that starts to bring it more back into balance. And we're still going to have the ups and downs, like they do happen, but it's more the awareness that we bring to them at the time. We don't go into the extremes as much because we're aware of what's happening. We can see it and we can kind of course correct it back into the neutral space, which gives us access to the power of the infinite space, like we've talked about in lots of different conversations before. That's where all the potential sits, is in that 0 point, that equilibrium. The neutrality point is where everything is possible. So we want to be trying to get back into that space as much as we can, to have access to that creativity. Imagination.
It's almost like you don't attach to the positivity and negativity anymore, sort of thing. Like you might still have those feelings arise type thing where you get excited about something. Oh, I'm going to go and do this. But it doesn't become who you are. Like there's definitely that sort of separation, and even though there's no separation in anything, there does seem to be that separation point type thing, or you feel a bit down about something, but it doesn't become who you are. Like it's just, you do start to see that as just an expression that's coming through at that time. And
it's like, not an identity.
I feel a bit sad about that, but it's like, oh, it will pass type thing. Like it's just something that's coming up in the moment. So yeah, it doesn't become that identity of you. You're just using those emotions as expressions for your story here, for your movie, just like we do on any movie set.
Yes.
So, and I guess the other thing is the whole concept of positive and negative actually doesn't exist, because really, standing there looking at, an event in front of us type thing, you've got 50 different people watching something take place. You've got 50 different emotions and different subjective views of that type thing. It's like some people will call that a really positive experience. Wow, that was amazing. Like I got this out of it. Other people were like, I didn't get anything out of that. Like it actually was pretty average or boring or made me sad, or like, so everybody's expressions are going to be quite different to seeing stuff. So who's right and who's wrong? Like, is there positive and negative at the end of the day anyway? It's all so subjective, and it only exists in the ego. There is no positive or negative. They're all just perceptions, human perceptions. So I guess when you really sort of take that on board, then you really choose not to attach to the positive or negative of something. It's just, everything just is. And you move about sort of just having those sorts of experiences, neutral sort of experiences. And it's not boring, as the ego might actually sort of go, oh my God, like you can't just do that. I guess that's where you really feel that joy and fulfillment, though. Like when you do have an experience that is just that neutral and you're just there, you're just present with whatever's going on, you're using all your senses and you're absorbing it in. I'm just thinking of going with Sharon and Jody to see, it's called Luminaires, and they project different things onto the wall. So you go in and it's a big warehouse space. It's very cool. Here in Paris, and they have like Van Gogh goes for like 20 minutes, and then they have another Japanese exhibition, and then finally one that I really liked, which was about space, about the universe and the birth of the universe. It was very cool. But it was just so interesting to sort of walk around and actually see everybody's take on things, sort of thing, like, the way they were absorbing that information and that having that experience together. There was quite a few hundred people in there.
Yes.
And it was just really interesting. Some people were sort of really focused on detailed things. Some people were like really sitting back, watching it all. I was walking around a lot, which was sort of really interesting. Like Jody sort of just sat and watched for a fair while, she said, in her experience. Whereas I was walking around quite a bit and just sort of seeing different aspects of it and looking at people's observations of it, looking at it from different angles. So there was a high tower part where you could go up and have a look and look down, and there's a mirror room and all sorts of different aspects of the actual space. And it's like, wow, everybody in here is actually having such a different experience of what's going on right now. Yet we're all watching the same thing.
Yeah.
And it was just sort of quite funny to watch from that neutral space of, okay, it's sort of what's it bringing up inside me type thing, different emotions and different things that it did bring up, and just observing those things. It was really quite interesting. But yeah, I think it was just highlighting the fact that everybody has just such a different take on that experience. Some people would have loved it. Some people would have been bored out of their minds out of it. I was a little bit bored. It was just sort of really interesting.
Yeah, different things that happen. Yep.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that I enjoyed the same.
Life seems harder or more tragic than your own. You can feel empathy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do connect over, like what Jodie's saying there, we do often connect over hard situations or somebody's down, and we sort of can relate, and we do connect sometimes that way, and we feel like, when we pull somebody up, so there's that positive negative thing kind of going on again. If somebody's down, we usually lift them up. So that is a point of connection, the human connection, I guess. But there is something that's probably a lot deeper, that's more accessible. We can access it when we get to that neutral place, that deeper place of connection, which is coming from that true unconditional love, rather than, oh, somebody's down, I've got to try and pull them up. And some of that may be a heart-based feeling, but a lot of times we do that out of feeling uncomfortable too, from somebody else's seeming negativity or seemingly down. That makes us uncomfortable, so we try to pull them back up as well. So sometimes it does come from that space too, because we don't feel like we can be in that energy. Like we don't have enough space, if you like, to kind of hold the presence for that person to just go through their experience for whatever's happening for them, and not try to change, fix, or improve it for them. It just is. It will be a movement that will go through them, and then they'll come back into that neutral place again too, like we all do. Yeah. The one thing I was thinking about the whole positive thinking movement, which I've definitely come across in a lot of circles, is this real fear, I would say, around, if I put my attention on anything negative, then I'm going to attract that into my space. And that definitely is very rampant in energy type work, like that I've come across, like energy, people that work with energy type modalities, if you like. So it could be an energy reader or an intuitive reader, or anything that kind of in that space. I've just sort of noticed it the more in that space, and maybe that's just because I've been in some of those circles and that's where I've noticed it. But there's definitely this sense of like, oh, I don't want to think about that, because then I'm inviting that into my space, and that's what's going to become my experience now. And I just, every time I hear that, it just kind of, I just almost laugh at times, because I'm just like, it's just so, I mean, it's untrue for a start, but also it's just very, it's just reinforcing to me that fear-based separation that the ego is trying to make us think all the time, that we are separate and we are small and we are separate from the universe. So a lot of the energy healers do sort of claim to kind of say that, oh no, we're all one and the energy's moving through me. But then if you then have that thought that, oh no, I don't want to put my focus on something negative happening, because I will attract that energy in. It's just like, but how is that not then making yourself separate? I don't kind of understand that when people say that. It just feels like it's the complete opposite to what you're actually saying you believe. Like it's kind of, it kind of makes you laugh in terms of that. But also it just feels like then you're just living, you basically are living in fear of anything that comes up that could fall into that negative place. So that would basically mean I can't be unhappy, I can't be whatever other feelings we want to have that we would put into that, say, negative space, if you like, sad, I'm depressed, and these are all judgments, of course, that we think that they're bad places to be in. They all serve us. It's only, but yeah, society definitely has a slant towards those type of emotions being bad, and we want to avoid those feelings as much as we can, to pull ourselves out of that space. But the more that you keep thinking, I can't go into that place, but if that is a natural, sometimes that is a natural emotion that needs to arise out of your body. But if you keep trying to avoid that place, it's just like, it's going to come out somewhere in you. Like if you don't let that express through your physical being, like in a normal way, like in just a normal having a feeling arise, let it move through you and not attach any sort of judgment to it, it will move out of your system. But if you keep repressing it and repressing it and repressing it, you will end up with depression, and you'll probably stay stuck in it for quite a long time, because you think it's not a place to be in, and then it has to come out somehow. And then you'll probably judge yourself for being in that depression space. So it's kind of like, this is where that cycle just keeps going, because we don't allow ourselves to have the positive and the negative experiences that are natural, just a natural part of our moving in the world. We're going to come across them, can't avoid them. So it's, you may as well work with what's coming up, like, and let it just express.
Yeah, that is the irony, isn't it? That you probably end up with depression if you try to be too positive. You'll actually end up creating the opposite. And then you're right, you'll stay in that space because you'll beat yourself up so badly. that it'll just keep on cycling over and over again. But yeah, that's the thing. If you're only going to deal with the positive emotions all the time and keep repressing, pushing down the, I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel this, I feel selfish, like all the negative things that we've deemed as negative.
Yes.
And some will have more weight than others, depending on your upbringing and your belief systems and all that sort of stuff. You know, just sadness to one person might be really full on to somebody else as an emotion because their mum was like that, or you know, it's been
triggers something.
it's triggered something. Yeah, so there's different weights to all these emotions according to, you know, how you're perceiving them. So, but pushing them down all the time and not allowing them to come up and surface, it means you're going to have to keep repeating that pattern. You're going to have to keep feeling sad until you look at it. So that's sort of the irony of this whole positive thinking movement type thing, is like it's probably actually going to make it worse by not allowing the negative stuff to arise and address it. And it doesn't mean getting stuck in the negative stuff. That the ego would love to be doing that as well. So then we go back down the other side and we go totally negative, because the ego loves the negativity, the glass is half empty stuff. So there really is such a fine balance between allowing the space for something to come up and actually dealing with it, allowing it to move through your energy and release, or sit there, like we talked about the other day, processing. It means this, it means that, labeling it, judging it, putting all these things on top of it, creating a story around why you feel sad right now, when in actual fact, you just feel sad. It's just an emotion that needs to come up and release from perhaps even your body, from that physical form, you know, that holds a weight and holds an energy inside your physical form. That's how I just look at it these days. It's like, if I feel like I'm getting really caught up in an emotion, a particular emotion, I just see it as part of my body, my physical system that needs to release. So it needs to either come out verbally, I need to go and have a sleep, I need to go for a run, whatever needs to happen. I don't do the run very often. But however it needs to come out, some sort of movement or something, it just needs to physically release itself from the body. So I don't even really dwell with the emotional side anymore. Like, it just feels like it's quite a physical thing, and then you feel the physical release from the body, and it's like, okay, cool, like that energy is gone now, I've moved through it. So then I don't feel like I get caught in the story of it so much, and create something around it. What do I say here? If you don't, you have to dig your way out at a later date. You do, and it literally is digging yourself out, because you've created such a hole for yourself. The story, and it's become this massive pit. Now you've got all this story around it, and all the guilt that goes with it because you haven't dealt with it. And it just gets worse and worse. It's like, it's so crazy, the whole positive thinking thing. Now we're talking about it and really diving into the topic of it. It's crazy. Like, it really is crazy to be going down that line. But consciousness is just where consciousness is at the time, and when that came up as a movement and thought process for people, then that's maybe all we knew back then, sort of thing. Like the word hadn't spread that maybe that's not the right thing. We can only deal with what we can. And I'm off the processing wheel. I know. And it feels well done, Lou. That's awesome.
That's cool.
Get off the processing wheel, 100%. Like, to me, that's just as detrimental as the positive thinking movement. Getting stuck in the processing, it'll just do your head in.
Definitely been down that path for many years. So yes,
many years.
I can claim that it doesn't get you anywhere. So well, temporarily,
I would say
feel some relief. The ego feels some relief, if you like, but that's about it. So
not even probably, but it's sort of like, I can say, like, now we've been doing these conversations for 2 months. I feel so many more shifts from doing these conversations for 2 months and only dwelling in this space now than I've probably had in years and years. Guaranteed.
I would say putting the focus, we talked about many times, is this where you're putting your focus is what you're drawing into your experience and what you're claiming your power back out of the stories, and you'll keep reaffirming to yourself what the actual truth is, and the other stuff just starts to fall away. So the positive and the negative, it's still there, as you said, but it's more the awareness of it's just an emotion now. doesn't draw you into a story like it used to, where something keeps happening and then we make it into a story, and then we keep reinforcing that story when it happens again, and then it just keeps happening and happening and happening, and yes, then we've just created a whole paradigm that we live by. So that's where it feels like it snowballs and you don't have control over it anymore, because we've just kept reinforcing the same story, whether that's positive or negative. It doesn't really matter. Could be either way. But I was just thinking about the whole thing with the advent of social media too, and I wonder how much that has had an influence on the positive thinking, perception of living happily. Everyone's happy all the time, and just thinking like, Instagram and
looks
stuff.
fantastic.
Everyone, when you think about, most people post stuff on their Facebook page when they're feeling in a really good space. Like, not many people post, oh, I'm having a really shit day. Like, it's kind of everyone's posting a great photo or something that they just did, that was really exciting, or holiday photos, or, we always, and it's great to share all those. There's nothing wrong with sharing those, but it's pretty much probably 99% of the time that's all people will share is the good stuff. So we do then create a feeling of like, oh, everybody's got their shit together and I don't. Like, that's often a story. But the thing is, everybody is thinking that. So everyone's
that's the thing. Like, everyone's got the same. Even the people that posted it has got the same thing.
Yeah. But a lot of the time, people have got, you see this with like celebrities and things all the time. Like, it looks like they've got the most perfect life and they live this really happy, fulfilled life. And then oftentimes you then find out, behind the scenes, that they're fully depressed, or they're,
and then it's a shock to everybody that they tried to commit suicide, and it's like, oh, how could Robin Williams do that? And it's like, because he's always projecting that he's happy all the time, and he's a comedian. Like, so many comedians, actually have suicidal tendencies because of that. It's got to come out somewhere.
Yeah, it's like you've created this persona for yourself, and you have to keep maintaining that. So if you're always the uplifter, say that you play that role all the time, perhaps in your family or with your friends, and you're always the one that's the positive one, and someone's down, you're always the one that sort of has the right words to pick that person up, and you're the one that everyone calls when they're feeling they've just broken up with their boyfriend, or they've had a fight with their parents or something, and they call you, and you're always that role. You sort of feel like you can't then go to them and talk to them when you're down, because I'm the one that's always the positive one. And so that's where I've definitely done that too. So it's like, that's where that identity starts to take a hold then, and we feel like we can't move outside of those stories anymore. So if we do have that idea that, oh, I've got to be the positive one all the time, I can't be vulnerable and show what's going on, then it has to come out somewhere. Like, so your whole life might be falling apart on the inside, but you're not telling anyone about it, but it has to come out somewhere. So either it's just something's going to fall apart altogether, and then people are going to find out anyway, or you might end up with a physical expression of that happening in your body because you're just not letting it out in the world, or your finances go to crap, or something. It has to show up somewhere to try and balance it out, because that's what life is trying to wake us up to, that point that it can't be all one way. It has to be the balance of between the two. We're always looking to bring them back into balance, and not getting attached to that story too. So it isn't about positive or negative either. At the end of the day, like we've been saying, it's about the non-attachment to those states. So it does just become an emotion, as you were saying earlier about, like, so say you go to a sport game and you're going for your particular team. So of course you're going to feel some kind of emotion when your team goes well in a game. Like, you're going to get excited and you're going to feel all these emotions moving through you. It doesn't mean that you have to kind of go, oh, I can't be excited, I have to kind of be neutral, I have to just sit here and pretend I'm not excited. It's like, no, that it's just a temporary emotion that's moving through you. You're not creating a whole story around it. It's not that's the difference between it's an expression that moves through your body. You feel excited in the moment, you feel it, and you have that experience, and then you let it go, sort of thing. You don't then kind of go, you could make up a whole story around that. Oh, my team's better than your team, and have a real thing with your friend around it, but get really caught up in that identity of being a fan, say, of a team, which happens a lot. And then people end up in brawls and all different things because they get so identified with their team and the experience they have with their team, rather than it just being an expression in the moment, an enjoyment, or a disappointment if your team doesn't go well. Like, it is just it is an experience at the end of the day, but we turn them into stories, and that's where our downfall happens, if you like, because we do get caught into the identities then and the stories. And life's going to try and balance us out whatever way it can, because that's what we came here to be, is to wake up to the truth of who we truly are. So we've asked for this, we've created it, so it shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I just had a big aha sort of a couple minutes ago when you're talking about, you sort of have this persona to friends perhaps that, not that you've got it together, but you're always there to be the shoulder to lean on type thing and to support people. And I certainly went through that stage for a long time. And it did get to the stage where I didn't speak to anyone about what was going on for me type thing, because there just seemed to be no room for that, or I didn't create the room for that.
Yeah.
I didn't speak up and say, okay, all right, we'll just deal with all your stuff. Here's mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did end up taking on, I guess, that persona. I don't think I actually sort of put two and two together, but until now. And it's like, yeah, I did actually wear that badge of being the supporter and the positive person and sort of helping people through stuff. But I never really got to speak to anyone else about it type thing.
Yes.
And I think even Jodie picked up on that too. She said, you've got a whole bunch of people around you sort of thing that you sit there and you listen to them for ages about all their stories and what's going on for them. And then you give advice and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I felt quite lonely, I guess, that there was lots of stuff going on for me. And I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. Like I just hadn't created, I can say it's my fault. I hadn't created relationships like that where I was able to, it was a two-way street to be able to discuss things. So I've definitely worn that badge, like, and I think now it's just coming to my awareness that that is a bit of an issue. And I guess that comes into even doing these lives and stuff. It's like, you know, there's times where I haven't felt 100% on top of the world, excited to be doing these lives, or I've just had other things going on and my energy might be a bit low, sort of thing. And it's sort of like, do we show up and actually say that and show up really authentically and have a conversation? We have done that. Like we have actually.
Yeah, we've had a few like that.
Where I haven't, either you or I haven't been feeling 100% either physically or mentally, energetically. So it is interesting to then show up on social media, whether that be doing a live like this or, you know, doing a photo or something like that. And I must say, Jodie has done that, like at times where she's had really shit day and she'll actually get on Facebook and she'll just write that. She goes, you know, I just feel really down today. Like this didn't work out and that didn't work out. And I feel really crap and it's just not going great right now. And amazing how much support is there. Like she would get more comments on that post than she would on any other post that she ever puts up.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, isn't that interesting? Like, so the support definitely is there. We just don't allow ourselves to do that and to show that side of ourselves on social media oftentimes, because there is this whole thing about everybody's got it together sort of thing. And maybe it is time for us little infinite beings to be more authentic, like actually be okay with that and just go, you know what, actually it's not all rosy all the time. And I don't feel great right now.
Yeah.
So be it.
And I think definitely when you're on the consciousness path or awakening path, if you like, I think we definitely tend to probably fall more into the positive thinking side, if you like in terms of we can see the potential. Like a lot of the time we're aware of the potential of what's inside people. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're thinking positive all the time, but it's more, we tend towards the, no, things can get better rather than things are going to get worse. Like we just think optimism. That way. Yeah, optimism, that's a better way. Yeah, it's a better term actually. Yeah, because it's not necessarily just positive thinking. We just see the glass half, you know, that half full rather than half empty, that type of way of being, I think. And also I think we tend to be quite empathic and intuitive and just, it's just our nature to kind of usually feel for other people, and we could see where they're at. We often feel energy or sense emotions or tension, you know, so we tend to be the natural uplifters a lot of the time, and so it's quite often that we've fallen into those roles through our lifetime, probably to our detriment at times, because then we do identify with that and feel like we can't move outside that story, or people don't let us move outside of that story. Like they've come to know us as that person they can count on, and so you feel like you need to be there all the time for that person too. So I think that kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with that positive thinking movement too. We've probably had that tendency to be that way and then it's almost like this paradigm of thinking comes along that kind of gives evidence that, oh, this is the right way to be, almost sometimes, like this is the better way to be, if you like it, and it sort of reinforces that feeling, perhaps. I don't know, I'm just wondering if that's part of it too. But
no, I do agree. I think it's I was just about to ask, like, what can we do about it type thing, but I guess it really is at 11:11 as I look at my clock here in Paris. I guess it is about just sort of observing those roles, like really feeling into it and going, have I taken on a role with different people? And it'll be different for different people type of thing.
Yes.
But are you always the clown? Are you always the uplifter? Are you always the one with the humor and the solutions and the answers and all that sort of stuff? And it's like,
Yes.
what if you weren't for a while? Or who, at least having one or two people that you don't have to be that in front of.
Yeah, true.
You can just open up and go, you know what, I'm not feeling it today.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why our partners become really important to us as well. Like when you can have a really authentic relationship with your partner and not have to feel certain things, like you
Yes.
just are what you are type thing, and you're actually
Yeah.
okay with it just being like that, and you're not trying to rescue each other out of that space as well. And that's the really hard one, when somebody you
Yeah.
really love, particularly a partner, is going through stuff and you're not trying to get them out of it. You're just there holding space for them and going, okay, I really feel what you're going through right now. That's okay.
Yes.
It's okay that you're going through that right now, and just I'll give you the space to go through it type thing. I'm not going to try and get you out of it and
Yes.
make you feel better.
Yeah. We did a 2-part conversation around exactly that topic maybe a couple of weeks ago now, I think, about when loved ones are going through hard times, and how do you not fall into that rescuing space, but actually being up and showing up and being supportive but not rescuing. So yeah, definitely check out. We did that over 2 days because it was quite a big topic to cover, but it was quite a powerful conversation, that one.
Yeah, it's just a lot of insights and shifts around after that. A lot more mindful of that, playing that role.
Yes.
Or not playing that role of the rescuer. Allowing people to have their space and not feel in the negative for a while.
Yep.
Because that's okay.
Yes.
Okay to feel the negative stuff.
Yep. And I think that whole thing with like you said, when you sort of do allow yourself to express authentically or show up exactly how you are and say, okay, maybe I'm not feeling that great today and I am feeling a bit down and this has happened and I'm just feeling a bit shaken by it, or whatever that story is that's going on, and then you do see that support come back to you in whichever form. If it's a Facebook post and you're getting some comments, or you get a message from somebody, or a phone call, or someone gives you a hug, or whatever's coming back, I mean, that is just that is the universe trying to sort of bring that equilibrium back in. It's trying to bring you back up out of that negative space again. So from that infinite perspective, we've created this whole story here. So it's like we're putting in all these outside things in our story, if you like, to kind of keep showing us that the truth, if you like. So you're not down, you're not positive, you're not negative, you're kind of always being brought back into that center place by things that are outside of you, or your internal thoughts, or it's always looking for that space, because that's where we access the infinite. That's the truth of who we are. So it's always happening outside of us. It's just where we put our focus. And if we are looking in terms of the topic today, if we're always looking at that positive, I guarantee you there's that negative space that's happening somewhere in your life that you keep avoiding and pushing away, and it will keep snowballing if you don't kind of bring yourself back into the balance naturally yourself. You'll be humbled by life in some way, shape or form. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely that humbling, when we have humbling experiences, you can guarantee you've been pretty up for a while. The harder it gets, the harder, the more you've been to one side for too long. But the mind has the ability to see both sides of everything in every moment. So it is there. We have that capability. It's not like we have to go looking for it. We just have to allow it into our space. And to see the balancing side of things. And a lot of people talk about sleep. So if you're really out of balance, you'll generally need more sleep, because it's in sleep that the mind actually balances itself back out again. So if you're quite a balanced person, you'll probably find you don't need as much sleep anymore.
True.
It is that because when you're asleep, obviously the ego is out of the way, so that's where the mind actually can rebalance itself and bring it.
Yes.
Because if it wasn't doing that, you'll be so out of whack that you'd almost not be able to even function here. So it is naturally doing that as well, but we can definitely help the process by being more conscious of it.
Yes. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day too, we can move through anything. Oftentimes people that are sort of attracted into the positive thinking all the time have probably gone through some really traumatic experiences sometimes too, and maybe this is their way of not forgetting necessarily what's going on, but it's become like a legacy, if you like, that's come out of a traumatic experience that you think, oh no, I'm going to be the opposite way in life. I'm not going to go through my life letting that run me, sort of thing. But then you might go too far to the other extreme, and that doesn't work either. Like it's you do have to kind of bring it back into balance. And I was just going to make that point of, like, you talked about John Demartini, the work that we did with him, and the process that he developed based on that law of physics about that every positive has a negative and vice versa, and then bringing them back into balance is where you reach that point of love. And it was quite a analytical, heady process. Like we eventually walked away from it for that reason, but at the end of the day it was a very powerful process. And there was not one traumatic experience that someone had gone through that you could not bring back into balance, like something that you would think would be the most horrific thing that you could ever imagine had happened to somebody, and to see that being brought back into a neutral place was just one of the most amazing things to witness. So some horrific child abuse or sexual assault, rapes, murders, someone in their family's been murdered, just some pretty amazing things that people have gone through. But to see them actually at the end of the 2-day workshop being in this pure space of love and having gratitude for the thing that actually had happened to them, and them actually saying, I wouldn't change it. And it's just like, that's just the power of life trying to show us what's actually the truth at the end of the day. So so that whole positive thinking thing, it's like it feels good, it feels good to the ego, but it's not the truth at the end of the day. So it's like, do we want to be closer to the truth, or do we want to feel good from the ego perspective? It's like, what's more important to you? So
if you feel good, you're going to feel bad. Somewhere along the way. Very powerful. Really, really powerful. Very cool. We'll talk more about that process at some stage too, that John takes people through, because I think it's worthy of a discussion. And you don't have to go through the full process that he takes people through. It's very, very involved. And it's very head orientated, but I think it serves too. Like if you're really very lopsided about a particular thing, like it's been a huge impact on your life, like child abuse or rape, or it doesn't even have to be that extreme. It could just be a breakup that you're going through.
And it's usually the judgment,
but you're so lopsided, thinking it's all negative and you can't see a single positive thing out of it. Then it does. The mind needs something like a mental exercise, like John takes people through, to actually rebalance it just slightly. Then we can get back into the feeling mode. But because we're so lopsided, we're not even in feeling at that point. We're just the mind is just coming up with so many stories and so many memories of what went wrong. In those things.
Like we've collected evidence for one side of the story and totally blocked our view of what's actually happening on the other side as well. So the whole process takes you through looking at traits in the person that you've got the judgment with. So that's positive or negative, but you look at all the traits that person has, and then you actually see where you've got all those traits showing up in your own life and how they show up in various forms, and you do exactly the same thing that person does. As I said, it's quite an involved process to balance it right out, but it's like it's undeniable by the end of the process. It's just like you cannot sort of walk away from that if you've done it correctly, and he will not let you walk out of the room without you actually getting the balance point, if you like, because that's the whole point of the weekend. Even someone that just sits there and goes, no, I can't see this, I can't see it, it's just like, it's there, guarantee you it's there, let's just look a bit deeper, sort of thing. So it's pretty phenomenal exercise, but it does just show you that it's always there. It's just where our focus is. So we're always going to collect evidence for one side of the story if we're not looking at for the balance all the time. So
as Jodie said, we're actually qualified facilitators of that work for John.
True.
Did it for many years with John. So if you're feeling out of whack, about something in particular, then and you want to have a chat about it at some stage, yeah, give us a shout. It's it is a really cool process that we can take people through.
Yeah.
There you go. Ah, thank you.
Thanks, John.
That's very cool. Always said she had a powerful shift. That's powerful shift.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, let us know in the comments what your experience is with positive thinking. Have you been down that line too? Have you got caught in it? And I think we all have at some point. So it's kind of, but how's the conversation today helped balance that out for you, if you like, the perception around being always positive all the time, or that difference between positive and negative, and bringing ourselves back into that neutral space?
Yeah.
Putting the focus on that.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Very cool. Yeah, let us know in the comments what's going on for you.
Yes. Thanks for joining us live. People here, and
yay. Thank you, ladies. Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you all again tomorrow for another Infinite Lucky Dip.
Yes. All right.
Okay. Bye. Think negatively now. Infinite.